So you had some time to work on the homework for lesson 11. We're going to go ahead and go over the answers here. So if you have any part of your work that's wrong, you want to make your corrections, and then ask questions about what you still don't understand. So if we look at number 1, it says determine the quotient of 2 4/7 divided by 1 3/6. And this one's just a generic division problem. It's not a story problem, not a real life situation. So we're just practicing our calculations. So make sure you have room to show your work. And we are dividing two mixed numbers. First thing we should do there is create improper fractions. So we're going to do 2 times 7 is 14, plus 4 is 18. 18/7. Do the same thing for the second value, what we sometimes call Texas math. 1 times 6 plus 3, this is going to be 9/6. And now we can divide fractions. The way that you divide fractions is to multiply by the reciprocal, or keep, switch, flip. Now we have a multiplication problem. We can multiply straight across. Another option, if you don't want to simplify at the end, is to do something called cross simplifying. And if we cross simplify, it's going to look like this. We're looking at these two cross products, 18 and 9, and we want to find a factor that we can simplify them both by. 9 would work. So if we divided 9 by 9, it's going to become 1. If we divide 18 by 9, it's going to become 2. And if we do that, which I just said is called cross simplifying, and it only works for multiplication problems. But if you do cross simplifying, you won't have to simplify at the end. So 2 times 6 is going to give us 12. 7 times 1 is going to give us 7. We still need to rewrite this as an improper or as a mixed number. It's an improper fraction right now. So if you had 12 and you had to take away 7, you could do that one time. You would have a remainder of 5 over 7. So our quotient is 1 5/7. Question number 2. 1 lap around a dirt track is 1/3 of a mile. It takes Bryce 1/9 of an hour to ride 1 lap. What is Bryce's unit rate in miles around the track? So we're going to set up what we know. We know that 1/3 of a mile is 1 lap. And then we know that Bryce can run that in 1/9 of an hour. So we're going to set up a ratio using this information. And we know that Bryce can do 1/3 of a mile, or 1 lap, in 1/9 of an hour. Now in this problem, they're asking us to find a unit rate. We know that a unit rate is a ratio with a 1 in the denominator. So instead of 1/9 of an hour, we want to know how far he can go in a whole hour. That's more time. So if we had an hour and we had it chopped into 9 pieces, how would you make it 1 full hour mathematically? You're going to multiply by 9. We can prove it. 1/9 times 9 equals 9 over 9, or 1. So when we multiply by 9, we are getting 1, which is going to help us get our unit rate. If we do that in the denominator, we also have to do it in the numerator. 1/3 times 9. Show our work off to the side. 1 times 9 is 9. 3 times 1 is 3. 9 over 3, or 9 divided by 3, is 3. We did all of that work for this number right here. And if we label it, it is 3 miles per hour. There's our unit rate. That's our answer to the question. Question number 3, Mr. G wants to make a shelf with boards that are 1 1/3 feet long. If he has an 18-foot board, how many pieces can he cut from that board? So we want to know how many full pieces he can get, how many full shelves he'll be able to make. So he has an 18-foot long board, and he's going to cut off pieces that are 1 1/3 feet to make shelves. And they want to know how many total shelves could he make. So really, and this is not drawn to scale, so it's not going to work out correctly, but as we start to cut this 18-foot board into pieces that are 1 1/3 feet long, we're breaking the board into equal pieces. In other words, we're dividing. So let's set up a division problem where we're taking our 18-foot board and we are dividing it into pieces that are 1 1/3 feet each. It just becomes a fraction division problem now. So we're going to do 18 over 1 divided by 1 1/3 as a improper fraction, which is going to be 4/3. We're going to divide fractions using our rule of keep, switch, flip. So we're going to have 18 times 3 over 4. You could do some cross simplification if you wanted to, like we did on the last problem. If you look at 18 and 4, they have a common factor of 2. So if we divide each number by 2, the 18 becomes 9 and the 4 becomes 2. 9 times 3 across the top is 27. 1 times 2 across the bottom is 2. Now we just need to figure out 27 divided by 2, or how many times could you subtract 2 from 27. That would be 13, and you would have a remainder of 1, so 13.5, or if you write it as a decimal, 13.5. The question asks us how many full boards could he get, so he could get 13.5. Logically, we're going to round this down to 13 because he could only get 13 full pieces. All right, number 4, the local bakery uses 1.75 cups of flour in each batch of cookies. The bakery used 5.25 cups of flour this morning. We have a 2-part question. Part A, how many batches of cookies did they make? So we're going to write down what we know, and that is that it takes 1.75 cups per batch, and that the bakery used 5.25 cups today. So we're going to set up a ratio. They gave us a unit rate. They told us that 1.75 cups will make 1 batch. The next thing we know is that they used 5.25 cups. So we're going to set up an equivalent ratio. This is known as a proportion. And we're going to write this 5.25 cups where it belongs in the proportion. I put cups on top in my initial ratio, so it needs to stay on top for this ratio as well. So if we look at our 2 ratios that we have, this one is our unit rate. That tells us that it's 1 3/4 cups for 1 batch. And if we look at this ratio, this one is going to give us our answer. Okay, so we've scaled it up. What we want to know is how many times would you have to multiply 1.75 cups to get 5.25, and then we'll multiply down here by the same number. So we're going to use I just put 3 and it might be 3, but we're gonna double check. So 1.75, what do you multiply it by to get 5.25? it's not a number that you'd normally think of. So if you don't know the number, then what you need to do is work backwards and divide, and it will give you the number. And you can use a calculator. So we're going to do 5.25 divided by 1.75. And it was 3. So we worked backwards and we divided, we got 3. So now we're going to multiply top and bottom both by 3. 1.75 times 3 will give you 5.25. We just proved that by working backwards. 1 times 3 is going to give us 3 batches. So how many batches did they make? The answer to that question is 3. Part B said if there are 5 dozen cookies per batch, then how many cookies did they make? So a dozen cookies is 12. And if they made 5, or if there's 5 dozen per batch, that would mean 5 times 12, or 60 cookies in each batch. And the bakery made 3 batches today. So we would then multiply that by 3, and we get 180 total cookies. Final question from the homework was Jason eats 10 ounces of candy in 5 days. And then a 2-part question. How many pounds does he eat per day? And then it gives you a recall fact here that 16 ounces is 1 pound. Because they want to know how many pounds he eats. And how long will it take Jason to eat 1 pound of candy? So first let's find out how many pounds per day he eats. We know that he eats 10 ounces of candy in 5 days. They want to know how many pounds does he eat per day. So right now it's per 5 days. So we need a unit rate. We need to know how much he'll eat in 1 day. So to get from 5 to 1 by division, you would divide by 5. And likewise on the top, you would also divide by 5, keeping your label. 10 divided by 5 is 2 ounces per day. But they want the answer in pounds. So if we look here, they want the answer in pounds, not ounces. So we need to make an adjustment. He eats 2 ounces per day. And it said there are 16 ounces in a pound. So 2 ounces is really 2/16 of a pound per 1 day. And 2/16 would simplify down to 1/8. So he eats 1/8 of a pound per day. Last part of the question, how long will it take Jason to eat 1 pound of candy? Well, we already know that he eats 1/8 of a pound per day. 1/8 of a pound per day. So if he needs to eat a full pound, you would have to multiply that by 8. So 1/8 times 8 would give us 1 pound. And 1 times 8 gives us 8 days. So it would take him 8 days to eat 1 pound of candy.